Teenage runaways disappeared in 1994. Street kids forgotten. Chapter 1. The Vanishing Point. On certain winter nights in downtown Toronto, when the wind knifed along Queen Street and the steam from manhole covers looked like the city's breath leaking into the dark, the abandoned building at the end of Jarvis felt almost alive. The kids called it the Castle. It had once been an office block, 8 stories of brick and glass from the 70s, but the glass was mostly gone now, punched out by vandals or peeled away by time. Sheets of plywood covered the lower windows and doors, tagged with layer over layer of spray-painted names and symbols. In the yellow cone of a distant streetlight, the graffiti glowed like bruises. Eric pulled his army surplus jacket tighter and exhaled into his cupped hands, watching his breath vanish. The air smelled of exhaust, fried food, and something metallic from the frozen streetcar tracks. "You sure about this?" Danny asked beside him, bouncing from foot to foot. Her blonde hair stuck out from under a wool hat, the ends stiff with old hair dye and cold. "Sure about what?" Eric said. "Standing here freezing my balls off? No. You know what I mean." She jerked her chin towards the castle. A dark van sat half a block down from the building. Its windows smoked. It had been there when they arrived, engine idling. The driver's silhouette was a black cutout behind the glass. "He hasn't moved," Eric said. "Exactly," she replied. On the other side of him, Malik stamped his boots and rubbed his gloveless hands together. The knuckles were cracked, the skin chapped. "If it was cops, they'd have rolled up on us already," he said. "Or at least done the slow cruise by with the spotlight. That's just some creep waiting on someone." "Comforting," Danny muttered. The fourth of their little group, Jen, leaned back against the brick wall behind them, her hood up, her eyes half closed. She had the slouched posture of someone who'd been on her feet all day and was too tired to shiver properly. "Relax," she said. "Nico said it's safe." Eric glanced at her. "Since when is that a sentence we should trust?" he asked. "Since he's the only one who's offered anything that isn't a shelter bed or a bad date," she replied. He did not argue out loud, but something crawled under his skin. Nico had been around for a couple of months now, drifting into the kids' circles like smoke. Never quite there when the cops did sweeps, but always appearing when someone mentioned being hungry enough to do something stupid. Late 20s, maybe 30, with clean jeans and a leather jacket that didn't look like it had ever touched a dumpster. Too old and too neat for their world. He never offered cash, not straight up. He offered warmer places, odd jobs, introductions, people. "You want to get off the street? You gotta meet people," he'd told Eric the week before, when they'd shared a cigarette behind a shelter. "Nobody's coming to rescue you just 'cause you're cold. You make your own way. I can show you doors. You choose whether to walk through." Tonight, the door was the castle. Supposedly there was a party inside. Warmth, music, food. A meet and greet with people who could help them get gigs. Dishwashing, cleaning, maybe club flyering if they were lucky. You had to be invited. Nico had chosen them. Eric stared at the building. A rectangle of faint light glowed halfway up, one window not quite covered. Shadows moved behind it. He thought of the shelter 2 blocks away, already full by dinner time. Kids squeezed into narrow bunks that smelled of sweat and industrial cleaner. He thought of the outreach worker, Claire, telling him 2 nights before, "If anyone offers you a job that sounds too easy, ask yourself why they're asking street kids and not putting up an ad." He'd nodded, pocketed the pamphlet with the crisis line numbers, and then watched her walk away into the snow. Now his stomach growled, and his fingers burned from cold. "You don't have to go," he said to Danny. She snorted. "And you do?" He shrugged. "Maybe, just to see." "Look," Malik said suddenly. "That's him." A figure detached itself from a doorway across the street, sauntering towards them. Nico's walk was easy, his shoulders loose, as if the cold barely touched him. A cigarette glowed between his fingers. "Hey, Familia," he called softly. "You made it." He flicked ash into the gutter and smiled, teeth white in the gloom. "Place looks like shit," Malik said. "That's the point," Nico replied. "Nobody pays attention to shit. Cops drive right past. People upstairs don't even know what's under their feet." He nodded towards the van. "What about that?" Danny asked, chin up. Nico's smile did not falter. "That's ours," he said. "Rides for later, if you're in. You said you wanted to see something other than these streets, right? This is how that happens." He studied each of them in turn, weighing. "Look, if you want to bail, bail," he said. "I don't drag anyone, But this is real. People inside can get you into kitchens, clubs, cleaning gigs. Not charity, work. You act like grown-ups. They treat you like grown-ups. Jen pushed off the wall. I'm going, she said, sick of my toes going numb every night. She gave Eric a look that said, do not make me walk in there alone. Malik shrugged. If it's bullshit, we bounce. Danny hesitated a few seconds longer, then exhaled sharply. Fine, she said. But if this turns into some creepy cult thing, I'm robbing you and leaving. Nico laughed. Fair enough, he said. Come on, stay close. He led them towards the castle, boots crunching on old glass. Up close, the building felt bigger, looming. The plywood sheets over the main doors were tagged with a dozen names Eric recognized from alley walls and park benches. Defiant ghosts. Nico rapped on one board in a specific rhythm. 3 quick knocks, a pause, 2 more. A moment later, a section of plywood shifted from within, revealing a narrow gap and a spill of warmer air that smelled of cigarette smoke and cheap incense. A man's face appeared in the gap, eyes sweeping over them. Eric caught a glimpse of a heavy jaw, a scar along one cheek. They're with me, Nico said. The man grunted, stepped back. The board widened just enough for them to slip through one by one. As Eric squeezed inside, his shoulder brushed rough wood. For an instant, he felt a pulse of pure animal fear, like the moment before a subway door closes, and you're not sure which side you'll be stuck on. Then he was in. The plywood thudded shut behind them, shutting out the city's cold stare. He did not know it then, but this would be the last time anyone on the street saw Eric, Danny, Malik, or Jen alive. Chapter 2. The File. In 1994, nobody in the Toronto Police Service was counting how many street kids simply failed to show up at the drop-in anymore. They logged missing youths, of course. There were forms, categories, tick boxes, but kids who lived in doorways and shelters, who drifted between crisis beds and the floors of friends' apartments, did not fit neatly into any of them. Runaways, the system called them. Habitual absconders. The assumption under the language was simple. If they'd walked out of one place, they'd walk into another. Sooner or later. Somewhere. Claire Morton knew better. She sat at a scarred desk in the back office of the youth drop-in, a mug of cold coffee by her elbow, leafing through a stack of incident reports. The radiator under the window clanked and hissed, but gave off little heat. Outside, late afternoon light turned the snow on the sidewalk a dirty orange. The reports were thin, mostly handwritten. Jenny, Jen S., did not check in for scheduled counseling session. Last seen at 10:30 p.m. near Jarvis St. Squats. Danielle, Danny, K. Bed empty 3 nights in a row at shelter. Peers say she's hanging at the building again. Malik R. asked staff for info on jobs. Did not return following weekend. Friends report rumors he scored something better. Eric L. Last seen 2 weeks ago at drop-in. Mentioned a guy with work. No details. Individually, they were heartbreakingly normal. Kids came and went. Some left notes. Most did not. There were always rumors of someone catching a ride west, of someone getting a job in a restaurant, of someone crashing with a guy they'd met. But Claire had been keeping a list on a yellow legal pad, and the names had begun to stack in a way that made her neck prickle. She circled the dates. The disappearances clustered around the same 2-month window. All 4 had been seen within a few blocks of each other before they dropped out of sight. All 4 had, in the weeks before, talked about opportunities that sounded just a bit too neat for kids who could not get hired at most places because of their age, lack of ID, or the smell of the street on them. She flipped to another report, a brief note from a shelter worker about a 15-year-old girl named Maya who had shown up shaking and half-frozen 3 nights earlier, asking for a bed, just for tonight, and refusing to give a last name. Maya, states she, got away from apartment where other girls are staying. Mentioned older man Nico, and someone called the driver. Refused to give address, said, they'll find me if I talk. Referred for crisis counseling. Claire underlined the names. Nico, the driver. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a puzzle piece clicked. Her phone rang, a sharp jangle that made her flinch. She picked it up. StreetLink Youth Services. Claire speaking. Hey Claire, it's Maria over at Covenant. Maria was a supervisor at the large youth shelter a few blocks away, the place where most of the street kids ended up at one point or another if they were lucky or desperate enough to seek a bed. Claire had known her for years. They traded stories, referrals, and, increasingly, warnings. You got a minute? Maria asked. I've got a bad feeling about something, and I think you might be seeing the same pattern. Claire's free hand tightened on her pen. Tell me, she said. Girls talking about private parties, Maria said. Guys offering rides to work at clubs. A couple of them mentioned an older guy. Calls himself Nico or Nico something. This ring any bells? Claire looked down at her notes. The name stared back. Yeah, she said quietly. It does. And now I've got 2 youths gone from our roster who used to crash at that abandoned office near Jarvis, Maria went on. Staff filed the usual missing reports, but, her voice trailed off. I know, Claire said. The forms would go into a stack. Someone at a desk miles away would scan them, shrug, maybe run a quick check for warrants, then file them under no further action. I tried talking to one of the detectives on division about it, Maria said. He said, and I quote, street kids come and go. If they're not home by now, maybe they found something better. Claire closed her eyes briefly. Did you file anyway? She asked. Yeah, Maria said. For what it's worth, I put everything I could in there. Names, hangouts, the building. But you know how they code it. Runaways. Claire knew. She had read the manuals. Cases where kids had an address, a guardian. A school were classified as missing children and triggered different protocols. Kids with no fixed address sat in a gray zone. Can you fax me the reports? Claire asked. I'll add them to what I've got. Maybe if we take a bundle, someone will listen. Sure, Maria said. But Claire, be careful, okay? The girls say these guys are organized. Cars, apartments, cash. That's not some creep with a mattress in a basement. That's business. I know, Claire said. That's what scares me. After she hung up, she sat for a long moment, listening to the radiator hiss. Then she got up, went to the filing cabinet, and pulled out a blank missing youth form. At the top, in the box labeled Name, she wrote in neat, firm letters, Multiple, Street Youth, see attached. Under notes, she wrote, Pattern of disappearances of homeless teens from Jarvis, Queen area over past 2 months. All last seen near same abandoned building. Possible recruitment by same adult males under pretext of work, party. High risk of exploitation or trafficking. Requesting investigation as linked cases, not isolated runaways. She stared at the word trafficking for a moment before underlining it. 10 years ago, she would not have used it. Now the word had begun to appear in reports and conferences, a label for something they had all seen at the edges for years. She doubted the form, on its own, would change anything. But it was a start, a line in ink saying, this is not normal. This is not just kids drifting. Someone was opening doors for them and making sure they never came back. Chapter 3. Inside the castle. The air inside the castle was warmer than the street, but it carried a different kind of chill. Someone had strung extension cords through the gutted lobby, wires snaking up the peeling walls. Bare bulbs hung from hooks, throwing cones of harsh yellow light that left the corners in shadow. Old office partitions created narrow corridors and open squares. The carpet underfoot was stained and brittle in places, soft and damp in others where the roof leaked. Music thumped from somewhere above, generic dance beats, heavy on bass, the kind you heard bleeding out of club doors on Richmond. Laughter and shouts lapped at the edges. Up here, Nico said, leading them along a corridor. Their footsteps made hollow sounds. Eric felt eyes on them from doorways as they passed. A couple of kids their age sat on overturned milk crates, smoking. One girl had a bruise blooming along her jaw. She looked away when Eric glanced at her. A boy with a buzz cut and a t-shirt too thin for the weather gave them a slow once-over, then nodded at Nico. New talent? He asked. Maybe, Nico replied. If they play nice. They reached a stairwell where the banister had been pried off, leaving raw bolts. Nico jogged up with the easy balance of someone who knew every uneven step. Eric and the others followed more carefully. On the 3rd floor, the smell of incense grew thicker. They stepped into a wide room that must once have been an open-plan office. Now, a ragged assortment of chairs, crates, and broken furniture formed a kind of lounge. A boombox sat on a filing cabinet pumping out the music. Christmas lights, months out of season, were taped along one wall, blinking feebly. A dozen teenagers lounged around, some on the floor, some sharing seats. Most looked like them. Layered clothes, mismatched boots, hair in various stages of neglect or experimentation. A few had on outfits that did not match the rest, too clean, too tight, like they had been supplied rather than chosen. At the far end of the room, half in shadow, A man in a dark turtleneck sat on a sturdy office chair, legs crossed. He was older than Nico, maybe mid-30s, with neat short hair and a watch that caught the light when he moved his hand. He looked more like a junior executive than someone who should be in a place like this. "Here we are," Nico said brightly, as if they had just arrived at a friend's party. "This is Eric, Danny, Malik, Jen." He gestured towards the man. "This is Victor. He's connected." Victor's mouth flickered in something that was not quite a smile. "Welcome," he said. His voice was soft, with a faint accent Eric could not place at first. Maybe Eastern European, maybe something else. "You can put your bags over there. No one will touch them." Malik kept his backpack on his shoulder a second longer, then shrugged it off and set it down with deliberate slowness. "What is this place?" Danny asked. She hated not knowing rules. "It's a space," Victor said. "Away from the weather. Away from cops who like to move you along. Away from people who think you're garbage." His gaze moved over them, appraising without being overtly leering. That, in a way, was worse. Eric would have known what to do with obvious sleaze. "We throw parties sometimes," Victor went on. "People come, they listen to music, they drink something that isn't out of a paper bag, they meet others. Sometimes there is work, dishes, cleaning, handing out flyers. Sometimes more interesting things." "What kind of more interesting?" Jen asked, trying for bored but not quite nailing it. Victor's eyes crinkled slightly. "Younger faces are good for certain clubs," he said. "You stand at the door, you hand out samples, you make it look like somewhere people your age want to be. You smile, you take cash for cover. Easy. Better than freezing in an alley, no? And we just trust you," Danny said. "Walk into a van with some guy we met once and hope you aren't taking us to a ditch." A few of the kids nearby smirked. One of the girls in the clean clothes watched Danny with open interest. "I like her," Victor said. "She has teeth." He leaned back slightly. "I'm not offended by suspicion," he said. "You'd be stupid not to have some. That's why I don't ask you to sign anything. You come once, you see. If you don't like it, you walk. But if you like it, doors open. You choose." It was the same line Nico had used. Polished. Eric glanced at the others. Malik's jaw was set, but his eyes had that hungry look. The look he got whenever anyone mentioned steady money. Jen's fingers tapped on her knee in an anxious rhythm. Danny's mouth was a hard line. "What about ones who left?" Eric asked. "From here. Kids who went with you and did not come back to the street. They get doors, too?" Victor's gaze sharpened. "Some," he said. "Some get apartments. Some go to other cities. Some cut ties because they don't want to be pulled back into this life. That's their choice. People like to imagine something terrible because it absolves them from admitting that sometimes someone simply does not want to see them anymore." It was a neat inversion. Eric felt the edges of it catching in his brain. A boy with bleached spikes in his hair walked over with a plastic crate of bottles. Soda, cheap beer. He handed them around without asking, his movements practiced. Someone turned the music down a notch. Victor uncrossed his legs. "I won't make speeches," he said. "You're old enough to know what you want. Nico thinks you are smart. I can use smart. So, there is a club tonight. 2, actually. One in the entertainment district. One up near Bloor. Pay is $50 cash each for the night. Ride there and back. You smile. You hand out passes. You say, 'Hey, come in. It's warm. It's fun.' You don't have to drink anything or take anything you don't want. You do not go home with anyone unless you choose to. Clear? 50? Malik repeated. "For one night? Each," Victor said. "You want more? We talk after." $50 was, to Eric's world, a fortune. It was a week of eating without counting coins. It was a second-hand coat from the thrift store that didn't smell of mold. It was, if you stretched it, a bus ticket partway out of the city. He could feel the others doing the math, too. Danny tugged her hat down. "What about ID?" she asked. "We're not exactly legal age for clubs." Victor's mouth curved. "Let me worry about that," he said. "We have arrangements." The girl in the clean outfit, short skirt, tight top, eyeliner smudged carefully, wandered closer. "It's not that bad," she said to Danny in an undertone. "You stand there, you flirt a bit. They think you're older anyway. You just shut off your brain and think about the money. Way better than some of the options out there." Her eyes flicked briefly to Nico, then away. Eric caught that, tucked it away. Victor clapped his hands softly. "Van leaves in half an hour," he said. "If you're in, stay. If you're out, Nico will show you out. No hard feelings." He stood, gave them one last assessing look, then moved towards a side room where a couple of older guys waited, thicker around the neck, heavier in the shoulders. One of them glanced at the teens and smiled thinly. "Big decision," Nico said lightly, stepping back into their little circle. "But hey, nobody's forcing anybody." Eric thought of Claire's face when she'd told him, "If someone offers you something that sounds like magic, ask what they're getting out of it." He thought of the outreach pamphlet in his backpack, probably crumpled under a hoodie. He thought of the way his fingers had gone numb last week, even under 2 pairs of gloves. "I'll go," Malik said. Jen nodded, almost immediately. "Me too." Danny blew out a breath, a cloud of steam. "If this is sketchy, I'm out the second my feet touch the sidewalk," she said. Nico held up his hands. "Fair." They all looked at Eric. His mouth was dry. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." Somewhere in the room, someone turned the music up again. The bass thumped like a second heartbeat. Chapter 4. The Ones Who Stayed. Not everyone went with Victor. After he disappeared into the side room, a few kids drifted towards the stairs, mumbling excuses. One boy in a shredded denim jacket tugged at Eric's sleeve as he passed. "Word of advice?" he murmured. "If they start talking about private parties, say you're sick. The club stuff is one thing. The parties, that's where it gets weird." "Why?" Eric asked quietly. The boy's eyes darted to Nico, then back. "Because that's when you ain't just decoration," he said. "That's when you're the entertainment." He moved away before Eric could ask more. Jen chewed her lip. "You hear that?" Danny muttered. "Maybe he's just pissed he didn't get picked," Malik said. "Look, we go. We see. We bail if it's bad. We're not chained to anything." The floor creaked near the stairs. Maya, the girl who would later stumble into the shelter shaking, sat on a broken desk near the wall, knees drawn up. Her eyes, too big for her gaunt face, watched the group with a kind of hollow dread. Eric did not know her yet. If he had gone over, if he had sat and asked, maybe some things would have gone differently, or maybe not. The problem with what-ifs is that they never feed you. Nico came back with a cardboard box. "All right, fashion show," he said, setting it down and kicking off the flaps. Inside lay a jumble of clothes: crop tops, snug shirts, short skirts, black trousers. Some still had store tags. Others carried faint smells of perfume and smoke. "Dress code at this place is look like you belong at a party," he said. "No snow pants, no army coats. You can change in there." He gestured towards a partitioned corner. Danny crossed her arms. "I'm not wearing anything that looks like it came from a page 3 advert," she said. "Relax," Nico said. "You can keep your jeans. Just throw on a nicer top. They want young, not naked. Not tonight." The implied later hung in the air, unsaid. Jen dug through the pile, pulling out a black tank top that looked only moderately revealing. Malik found a collared shirt that almost fit. Eric took a dark, long-sleeved shirt that did not scream club kid, but might pass under dim lights. When he emerged from behind the partition, he barely recognized himself. Without the bulk of his jacket and 2 hoodies, he looked thinner, taller, vulnerable. Nico whistled. "Look at you," he said. "Could be any kid on a Friday night, right? That's the point. You blend." Danny came out last, grudgingly wearing a red top under her battered leather jacket. She had drawn a line and forced herself not to budge past it, for now. Victor reappeared, as if summoned, with the 2 heavy-set men in tow. "All right," he said. "Time to move." He looked at each of them in turn. "Remember," he said, "you're there to make people want to come inside. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to. If someone gives you trouble, you go to one of my men. You don't start fights. You don't steal. You don't talk to cops." "What if the cops talk to us?" Danny asked. "Then you smile and say you're just passing out flyers," Victor said, "and you let the adults handle it." The word adults landed oddly, given the company. They filed down the stairs, their street clothes in plastic bags slung over shoulders. The plywood door groaned open. Cold slapped Eric's face. The van's engine was still idling. Up close, he saw it was older than it had looked from a distance, with rust along the wheel wells, and a faint dent in one panel. The windows in the back were indeed smoked, almost black. The driver stood by the side door, a man in his 40s maybe, with a shaved head and a heavy jacket. His face was broad and unreadable. He nodded at Victor, who handed him a folded note. "Clubs and times," Victor said. "Same route as last week. Keep them together." The driver glanced at the kids, eyes flicking over them without expression, then yanked the door open. Get in, he said. The interior smelled of vinyl and cigarettes. 2 bench seats ran along the sides. No windows in the back doors, just metal. Eric climbed in, his breath fogging in the dimness. Malik slid in beside him. Jen and Danny took the opposite bench. Nico hopped in last, perching near the door. The driver slammed it shut. For a moment, the only sounds were breathing and the thud of Eric's pulse. Then the van lurched into motion. From the outside, it was just another anonymous vehicle merging into downtown traffic. From the inside, it was a one-way ride. Chapter 5. Paper Walls. The first time Claire took her thick folder of missing kids to the police station, she rehearsed what she would say in the mirror of the drop-in's tiny bathroom. This isn't about one runaway, she told her reflection. It's about a pattern. It's about targeting. If they were kids from Rosedale, you'd have half the force looking. Being poor doesn't mean you get to disappear. Her reflection looked unconvinced. Dark circles under its eyes, hair scraped back into a hurried bun. She had the worn-out air of someone who spent more time listening to other people's nightmares than sleeping. She went anyway. Division 51 sat in a squat brick building not far from the waterfront. The waiting area smelled faintly of floor cleaner and stale coffee. Posters on the wall asked, "Have you seen these children?" Above rows of school photos, smiling faces in neat clothes. None of them looked like the kids Claire worked with. At the counter, a civilian clerk behind glass looked up as Claire approached. "Help you?" he asked. "I'd like to speak to someone about a missing youth file," she said. "Actually, several files. I think they're connected." He sighed quietly, a sound of habit more than malice. "Missing persons unit is upstairs," he said. "Second floor. Ask for the duty detective." Upstairs, a secretary pointed her towards a small office with fluorescent lights too bright for the tiny space. A man in a cheap tie sat behind a desk stacked with folders. He looked up, pen poised. "Detective Carlson," he said. "You're from StreetLink Youth Services," she said, holding out a hand. "I'm an outreach worker." He shook it, then gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you, Ms. Claire Morton?" she supplied. "I'm here about 4 youths, maybe more, who've gone missing in the last 2 months in the Jarvis Queen area. They're street involved. Most of them connected to shelters and drop-ins. I think there's a pattern." She set the folder on his desk and opened it, fanning out the forms. He glanced at the names, brow furrowing slightly. "These are all runaways," he said after a few seconds. "From shelters." "From shelters, yes," she said. "From the street, no. The street's their home right now. They have routines. They check in. When they stop showing up at all, it's not just them going to a friend's for a few days." Carlson tapped his pen on one file. "Eric L.," he read. "Last known address in A. No legal guardian listed. History of leaving group homes. Last contact with police 6 months ago for shoplifting. We get a lot like this." "I know you do," Claire said. "But look at the dates. Look at the last seen locations. They cluster around the same building. And we've got accounts from other youths about an older man. Goes by Nico. And a driver in a van. Offering work, rides, parties. It fits the pattern of grooming for exploitation. Trafficking, if you want to use the word the feds are using now." He shifted in his seat. "Trafficking's a big word," he said. "We use that for cross-border stuff. Smuggling people in. This sounds like locals being scuzzy." She kept her voice level. "Call it what you like," she said. "Kids are being recruited off the street for sex work and other things. They're being taken somewhere. They're not coming back. They're not calling. They're not popping up at other shelters. That is not locals being scuzzy. That's organized. That's a pipeline." He studied her for a moment, perhaps weighing whether she was overreacting or onto something. "Look," he said finally, "I'm not saying you're wrong, but you have to understand the volume we deal with. We get dozens of missing person reports a week. If we threw full resources at every teen who walks out of a facility, we'd have nothing left for abductions, for domestic situations, for... These are domestic situations," she cut in, sharper than she meant. "The street is the home they have, and someone is breaking into that home and taking them." Silence stretched a few seconds. The hum of the fluorescent light seemed suddenly loud. He sighed. "What is it you're asking for specifically?" he said. "Surveillance on this building? Undercover officers? I can't just pull that out of a hat." "Start with treating these as linked cases," she said. "Flag them. Ask patrol to keep an eye on the building. Talk to the vice unit. They're hearing about new faces in the clubs all the time. Ask if any of them look like kids from Jarvis." "And you?" he asked. "I'll keep talking to the ones who are still here," she said. I'll get you names, descriptions, whatever I can. He looked at the folder again. I'll put in a note, he said at last. Flag the location, like you said, but I'm not promising miracles. Miracles would be nice, she said, standing. I'll settle for someone giving a damn before another four go missing. She left before he could answer. In the corridor, she leaned against the cool wall for a moment, breathing slowly. It was not a victory, but it was more than nothing. Paper walls, she thought. That's what we build. Maybe if we stack enough of them in the right place, they'll slow the fire. Chapter 6. The Club. The first club was on a narrow side street off Richmond, a concrete box with a neon sign flickering overhead. Even early in the night, a small queue had formed outside. People hunched in their coats, stamping their boots, smoke curling from clusters of cigarettes. The van parked half a block away, at an angle that made it hard to see the plates from the main road. The driver killed the engine. Okay, Nico said, twisting around to face them. Here's how this goes. Victor talks to the door guy. You line up along the sidewalk. You hand out these. He produced a stack of glossy cards from his jacket. Each bore the club's name, a time, and the words, "No cover with this pass," in bold letters. You smile, he went on. You tell them it's a good night. Maybe mention the DJ's name. You don't block the sidewalk. You don't take any crap. If someone gets grabby, you move back and tell me or one of the guys. Got it? Jen nodded, fingers already itching for the cards. Danny rolled her shoulders, trying to shake off the van's claustrophobia. What about inside? Malik asked. We get to go in? Maybe later, Nico said. Depends how the night goes. First we see how you do out here. He slid the door open. Cold air knifed in, bringing with it the smell of stale beer, perfume, and hot asphalt. Eric stepped out onto the sidewalk. The city felt different from this angle. He was not hiding in a doorway, not scanning for cops to move him along. He was part of the scenery, almost legitimate. Victor was already at the club's entrance, talking quietly with the bouncer, a big man in a leather jacket. Money changed hands. The bouncer barely glanced at the kids, just jerked his chin in what might have been assent. Positions, Nico said. Eric, you and Danny over there. Malik, Jen, you take that side. I'll float. Eric took a fistful of passes. The glossy paper felt strange between his fingers after so many nights, clutching cardboard signs and coffee cups. The first few interactions were awkward. A couple in their 20s brushed past without making eye contact. Two guys in ball caps took passes, smirked at Danny, made a crude joke. She shot back something sharper. They laughed, delighted or stung. It was hard to tell. Hey, man, Malik called to a trio of students in puffy jackets. No cover with this. Save it for drinks. They hesitated, took the cards. One grinned. Sweet, he said. Thanks, kid. Kid. Eric swallowed the sting. After a while, it became a rhythm. Card, smile, line. They fell into it the way they had fallen into panhandling. A script. A performance. Only this time, people's eyes slid over them less quickly. They were part of the product. Nico drifted between them, checking in. You're naturals, he said at one point, clapping Eric on the shoulder. See? You belong out here. It was almost believable. As the night deepened, the line thickened. Music thudded through the club walls, bass vibrating the sidewalk. The air smelled of spilled beer, sweat, cheap cologne. At one point, a police cruiser rolled slowly past at the end of the street. Eric's muscles tensed automatically. The cruiser slowed, lights reflecting off wet pavement. The bouncer stiffened. Nico lifted a hand in a casual wave. The cruiser idled for a moment, then moved on. See? Nico said under his breath. Nobody cares as long as the money flows. It was sometime after midnight when Victor signaled them to pack it in. His two heavy men gathered the remaining passes. Good first round, Victor said, as they climbed back into the van. You didn't fight. You didn't steal. You didn't cry. That's more than I can say for some. Do we get paid now? Malik asked, unable to keep the edge of eagerness from his voice. Victor chuckled. Half now, half later, he said. We've got one more stop. He handed each of them a folded 20 from a roll in his pocket. See? He said. Real money. The bill felt unreal in Eric's hand. He thought of the outreach workers who handed out transit tokens and meal tickets, careful not to give cash because it could go to drugs, to booze. This felt like the opposite of careful. Last club is smaller, Victor said as the van pulled away. More exclusive. Fewer passes, more faces. You'll do fine. Eric's stomach tightened. Exclusive how? Danny asked. Victor's smile thinned. People pay more to be there, he said, which means they expect more atmosphere. You're part of that, that's all. He did not elaborate. Outside, the city slid by, pools of light under street lamps, dark stretches in between. The van turned onto side streets Eric did not know. His internal map, built from walking and riding streetcars, began to blur. He tried to track the turns anyway. Left, right, over the tracks, under a rail bridge, past a row of shuttered shops. He lost count. Chapter 7. The Other Door. The second club was not downtown. The van pulled into the rear of a low, nondescript building in an industrial strip, the kind of place Claire's kids called nowhere land, too far from the core to be interesting, too close to the highway to feel safe. The back door was steel, unmarked except for a small camera above it. A faint pulse of bass thrummed through the metal. The driver killed the engine and turned to look into the back for the first time that night. Phones, he said. We don't have any, Danny snapped. He held out a hand. Empty your pockets, he said. All of you. It's policy. Jen glanced at Nico. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. Do it, he said. Club's jumpy about photos. That's all. They turned out their pockets. Eric had nothing more than a few coins and an old lighter. Danny produced a pack of gum and a folded bus transfer. Malik, grudgingly, handed over a pager he'd been borrowing off and on from a dealer. Jen had a small disposable camera she'd been saving rolls for. The driver's lips thinned as he took it. Hey, she protested weakly. You'll get it back, he said in a tone that said she might not. He passed everything to Victor, who slipped the items into a canvas bag and tied it. Safe keeping, Victor said. You're here to work, not to play tourist. A buzz sounded as someone inside unlocked the steel door. Warm air, heavy with perfume and sweat, spilled out along with a wave of sound, more muffled than the first club, but deeper somehow. They followed Victor inside. The corridor was narrow, painted black. Red lights glowed along the ceiling. As they reached the end, it widened into a small anteroom with a curtain of heavy red velvet. A woman in a tight black dress stood beside it, clipboard in hand. Her eyes scanned them quickly. Fresh batch? She asked Victor. For the floor, he said. Just atmosphere tonight. Uh-huh, she said. They know the rules? They will, he said. He turned to the teens. Listen carefully, he said, his voice dropping a notch. No wandering. You stick to where I tell you. You don't go down any stairs you're not invited down. You don't go into back rooms unless someone from my crew is with you. If anyone touches you and you don't like it, you move away and get my attention. You do not make scenes. This isn't some high school party. People here paid a lot to be left alone. The red curtain parted. The main room beyond made the first club look like a church hall dance. Low couches ringed a polished floor where a few couples swayed, their movements more suggestive than the average nightclub grind. Lights moved slowly across the ceiling, picking out glints of sequins, jewelry, eyes. A long bar glowed along one wall, bottles lined up like soldiers, and everywhere, men in suits. Not all. There were women, too, some seated with drinks, some moving through the room with trays. But the weight in the room belonged to the men, middle-aged, well-fed, watches and cufflinks catching the light. They looked like lawyers, businessmen, maybe cops off duty, the kind of men Eric had only ever seen from below, on the other side of a counter or a desk. Heads turned as the kids came in. A ripple of interest, quickly masked. Eric felt his skin crawl. Smile, Nico murmured. You don't want to look scared. They smell that. Victor gestured. Spread out a bit, he said. You're just like any other young person out for a time. Lean against a wall. Dance a little. Make it look like this is your place. 2. What are we actually doing? Danny asked under her breath. Being seen, he said. That's all. For the first hour, that seemed true. They hovered at the edges, props in someone else's show. A couple of men asked them for light. One offered to buy Malik a drink. Victor intervened smoothly, diverting him towards the bar. You can have one soda, Victor told them later in a side corridor, handing over plastic cups. No booze. You need your wits tonight. Tonight? Jen echoed. What about later? He did not answer. Around 1 a.m, the music shifted. The slow throb gave way to something more rhythmic, and the couples on the floor thinned. A woman in sequins took to a small platform near the bar, dancing with professional boredom. Victor appeared at Eric's side. You've done well, he said. I told you. Easy money. When we're done, the driver will take you back to the building. You pick up your things, you go. Tomorrow we talk about something more regular." Eric nodded, though a knot of unease had settled in his gut. He scanned the room. Danny leaned against a column, arms folded, eyes hard. Malik was talking to a girl in a glittery top about how, "We're just here for the night, it's stupid." Jen had disappeared from his line of sight. He frowned. "Where's Jen?" he asked. Victor's gaze swept the room. "Bathroom, maybe," he said. "Don't worry, she's not going anywhere." His tone was light. Eric did not buy it. "I should check," Eric said. Victor's hand settled on his shoulder, fingers firm. "You should stay where you are," he said. "Trust me, it's not smart to go wandering. First night, you keep your head down. That's the deal." Eric's heart thudded. He thought of Jen's earlier bravado, thin, clingy shirt, nervous laugh. He thought of the boy at the castle warning about private parties. He looked past Victor towards a door near the back, half hidden behind a curtain. 2 men stood on either side of it, arms folded. One of them was the heavy from the castle, the scar on his jaw catching the light. The knot in Eric's gut tightened. For the first time that night, the money in his pocket felt like ballast dragging him under. Chapter 8. Whisper Networks. On the street, kids talked. They talked in doorways, in stairwells, in the back corners of drop-ins, trading rumors like currency. Word about the castle and the clubs spread the way all such things did. Unevenly, distorted, but with enough truth at the core to be dangerous. By the time Maya showed up at the shelter, those whispers had taken on a new tone. She arrived just before dawn, jacket half-zipped, hair tangled, one sneaker missing. The overnight staff at Covenant House recognized the look immediately. Eyes too wide, movements jerky, the way she flinched at doors opening. They gave her a blanket and a hot drink, then called the on-call counselor who called Claire. Claire had worked an evening shift and gone home around midnight, promising herself she would not check her pager. Just one more time. The shrill beeping at 4 a.m. tore through what little sleep she'd managed. She called the number back, throat dry. "We've got a girl," the counselor said. 15, maybe 16. Says she got away. Mentions apartments, parties, other girls. "I thought of you." By the time Claire got there, the sky was just beginning to pale. Snowflakes drifted past the streetlights in slow spirals. Maya sat in a small interview room, blanket around her shoulders, styrofoam cup between her hands. She stared at the table, jaw working. Claire eased into the chair opposite. "Hey," she said softly. "I'm Claire. I work with a lot of young people who've been on the street or in tough spots. You're safe here. Nobody's going to drag you out." Maya's fingers tightened on the cup. "They always say that," she muttered. "Then somebody shows up and says I gotta go back." "Who said that before?" Claire asked. Maya's eyes flicked up, then down. "Social workers. Cops. Men in suits. We don't work for them," Claire said. "We work for you. You get to decide what you tell me." Maya snorted softly. "You just want a report," she said. "So you can put it in a file and go, tsk. Hey, and then nothing changes." The accuracy stung. "I want enough to try to stop it happening again," Claire said. "To you, to your friends. I can't do that without you." Silence stretched. Finally, Maya sighed. "It started with parties," she said. "Always does, right?" She described the castle, the makeshift lounge, the lights, Victor, the van. Her words tumbled out in bursts, halting, then rushed as if she had to get past certain points quickly or stop. "At first it was just clubs," she said. "Like they said, stand there, hand out stuff. Some guys stare, some don't. You get money, $50, just like that. I thought maybe they weren't lying for once. And then," Claire prompted gently, "then they started talking about private events," Maya said. "More money. You had to look nicer. They gave us clothes. Borrowed, they said. You had to leave your old stuff at the building. They said it made us look more professional," she grimaced. "That's when they started putting hands on you," she said. "Not Victor. The other guys. The ones at the doors. They'd test, like, push a little, see if you flinch. If you didn't, they'd smile and say you were a natural." Claire's pen moved quietly across the page. "Did they talk about where the money was coming from?" she asked. Maya laughed, a thin, cracked sound. "They said it was from the clubs," she said. "From clients. From friends of the business. They didn't say it was from men paying to see girls my age take their clothes off in rooms with no cameras." Claire's stomach lurched. Did you have to? She could not quite shape the words. Once, Maya said. They took me and 2 others to this place above a bar. Said it was auditions. There were cameras, lights, men sitting in chairs. I left. I ran when they turned around. I don't know what happened to the others. Her voice shook for the first time. Claire slid a box of tissues across the table. I'm sorry you went through that, she said quietly. None of that is your fault. None. Maya wiped her nose roughly. You're gonna call the cops, she said. I know how this goes. They'll say I'm a whore. Say I asked for it. Say I could have left any time. Then they'll send me back to some group home where some foster dad thinks I'm there for rent. Her eyes flashed. I'm not going back, she said. I'd rather sleep outside. Claire swallowed. I'm not going to send you anywhere you don't agree to, she said. But I am going to take what you've told me and add it to what I already have. There are other kids missing. Eric, Danny, Malik, Jen. Does any of those names ring a bell? Maya frowned, thinking. Eric, she said slowly. Tall, dark hair, always wore that army coat? Yes, Claire said, heart quickening. He was at the castle, Maya said. First night I went. He looked like you, like he was watching everything. Then he wasn't there anymore. She met Claire's eyes, something like guilt flickering. I should have said something sooner, she whispered. You're saying it now, Claire said. That matters. She closed her notebook slowly. I need to ask one more thing, she said. Do you think those men, Victor, the driver, would try to come here? To this shelter? Maya's laugh was bitter. They don't have to, she said. They've already got kids inside. They got recruiters, boys who bring in girls, girls who bring in boys. They offer cigarettes and jobs and not having to line up for a bed. You think they don't know where we sleep? They know everything. Claire read the truth in her eyes. The network wasn't just a van and a building. It was a web threaded through their whole makeshift world. Claire felt a cold dread settle under her ribs. If that was true, then going to the police was only half the battle. The other half would be convincing kids who had every reason not to trust adults that this time, someone might actually try to keep them safe. Chapter 9. Downstairs. The longer Eric stood in that club, the more the room felt wrong. Not just the men in suits and the women in sequins. Not just the way the air felt thick with money and expectation. It was the currents beneath it all. Looks exchanged over heads, doors watched by men who did not drink, hallways where the music did not quite reach. And now, Jen was gone. He scanned the crowd again, heart thudding. No messy ponytail, no nervous laugh, no familiar slouch. Just bodies and lights and the slow turn of dancers. I'm going to check the bathroom, he said, already stepping away. Victor's hand closed tighter on his shoulder. You're staying where I can see you, Victor said quietly. House rules. You said we could walk if we wanted. Eric shot back, trying to keep his voice low. I'm not a dog. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. And I said you don't wander, he said. This isn't the Y. You get lost here. There's nowhere good to be found. Danny was watching from a few feet away, jaw clenched. She moved closer. Where's Jen? She demanded. She went to the bathroom 20 minutes ago. Victor exhaled through his nose, as if dealing with children. She went to help with something, he said. She'll be back. Help with what? Danny said. You said we hand out passes, we stand around. Nobody said anything about helping. Victor's patience thinned. Maybe she's showing she wants to work, he said. Not just stand and pout. Eric felt heat rise in his chest. You said we choose, he said. If this is pushing people into things they didn't sign up for, that's not choice. That's... Victor's fingers dug into his shoulder hard enough to hurt. Listen to me, Victor said, voice still low but now edged with steel. You want to go back to the castle tonight with money in your pocket and no bruises. You stand there and do what you're told. You cause scenes. You make trouble. I start to wonder if you're worth the risk. A man in a navy suit glanced over. Curiosity pricked. Victor's grip loosened by a fraction as he flashed a charming smile in that direction. Problem? The man asked. None, Victor said smoothly. Kids are just excited. The man chuckled and turned away. Victor's voice dropped again. You don't know this world, he said to Eric. I do. There are worse places to be than here tonight. Trust me on that. It was the trust me that almost made Eric swing at him. He didn't. He swallowed, hard, and stepped back, breaking Victor's grip. Fine, he said. We finish. Then you take us back. All of us. Of course, Victor said, as if he hadn't just threatened him. I keep my deals. He moved away towards the bar, conferring with the woman with the clipboard. Danny slid up beside Eric. This is bad, she muttered. We need to find her. Now. Eric's eyes drifted again to the half-hidden door at the back, the one with the two big men on either side. Bathrooms? He asked, as casually as he could manage, pointing towards the darkness beyond. Other side, one of the men grunted, jerking his thumb elsewhere without looking at him. Eric didn't move. The man's eyes flicked up, cold. You deaf? He said. Eric forced a laugh. Just don't want to get lost, he said. First time here. Then do as you're told, the man said. Or you won't like where you end up. Danny grabbed his sleeve, pulling him away. Stop, she hissed. You're going to get us both thrown out the wrong door. The wrong door. The phrase stuck. They endured another hour, maybe more. Time blurred, cut into chunks by songs and glances and the clink of glasses. Every so often, Eric caught sight of Nico by the wall, arms folded, watching like a bouncer who was also watching the bouncers. At some point, Jen reappeared. She came out of the corridor near the back, walking a little too stiffly. One of the heavies followed a step behind, then peeled off when he saw Victor watching. Her makeup, what little she'd had, was smeared. Her eyes were flat. Eric's breath caught. He moved towards her, but Victor got there first, intercepting with a smooth pivot. You okay? Eric called, ignoring Victor's presence. Jen's gaze slid past him, unfocused, then sharpened enough to land on his face. Yeah, she said. Her voice sounded wrong. Fine. Just bathroom line. She clutched at the strap of her borrowed top, knuckles white. Eric wanted to push, to ask, to demand. The words jammed in his throat under the weight of the room's stare. Almost done, Victor said, as if soothing children on a long car ride. You're doing great. Eric felt nauseous. He realized, belatedly, that this was how it worked. Not with chains and gags and dark alleys, or not only with those, but with small concessions, blurred boundaries, pressure applied where kids had nowhere to lean back. You went along, just this once, and then next time you'd gone along before, so why not again? He caught Jen's eye once more. If we get out, he thought, we are not coming back. Chapter 10. The Missing. They got out. Around 3 a.m, Victor herded them back to the van. Good work, he said, as if they'd just finished a shift at a diner. You held it together. I'm proud. Nobody answered. In the dim light of the van's interior, Jen's face looked waxy. Her eyes were too big, pupils still dilated from whatever had been in the drink someone had pressed into her hand, to calm her down. She hadn't had time to say no before the glass was against her lips. Danny sat close to her, one arm around her shoulders, glaring at anyone who looked their way. Malik's leg jiggled uncontrollably, heel tapping against the metal floor. Eric stared at the corrugated ceiling, picturing the map of turns again. Left, right, highway ramp, off again. Back towards lights. The driver stayed silent. Nico hummed tunelessly under his breath. When the van pulled up behind the castle, the sky was starting to pale at the edges. The city felt emptied out, as if all the regular people had been scooped away, leaving only cleaners, cabbies, and them. They tumbled out, stiff and exhausted. Come back tomorrow night, Victor said at the door. Same time. We'll have more work. Eric's mouth moved before his brain could stop it. No, he said. Victor cocked his head. No? He repeated. We're done, Eric said. We did one night. That's enough. Victor's smile was faint. You want to sleep on the sidewalk again? He asked. Eat out of bins? Freeze your fingers black? I'm offering you something better. You lied, Eric said. You said no back rooms. No pressure. You said we could walk. You didn't say you'd... He cut himself off, glancing at Jen. Victor's gaze followed, then returned. You think the world out there is honest? He said. The shelters? The group homes? The men who pick you up outside 7-Eleven? They'll all tell you what you want to hear until they get what they want. At least with me, you know the score. I know enough, Eric said. We're not coming back. Victor shrugged. Suit yourselves, he said. Doors always open. For a while. He slipped back inside, the heavy at his shoulder. For a few seconds, the 4 of them just stood there, breaths misting. Let's go, Danny said. Now, before they change their minds and drag us back in. They grabbed their plastic bags of clothes from the corner where they'd left them, shoved jackets on with shaking hands, and walked away from the castle without looking back. None of them noticed the small camera mounted high on a lamppost opposite, its red light blinking faintly as it recorded. 3 days later, Eric didn't show up at the drop-in. It was small things at first. He missed one meal, then another. Danny came by alone, eyes shadowed. "He's sleeping off a cold," she said the first day. "He's crashing at someone's place," she said the second. Claire knew kids came and went. She also knew Danny well enough by now to hear the strain under the words. "Where?" Claire asked. Danny hesitated. "Just not here," she said. "He said he might go to Montreal. Talked about it before." "Did he have a bus ticket?" Claire asked. "Money?" Danny's jaw clenched. "Do you have to write a report every time someone breathes?" she snapped. Claire held up her hands. "I'm not trying to trap you," she said. "I'm trying to keep track. Because when they go, and they don't come back, I'm the one filling in the forms." Danny's eyes softened for a second. "I'll tell him you're worried," she said. "If I see him." She left before Claire could ask more. The next day, Malik vanished too. No one knew where Jen was. She had stopped coming almost immediately after that night. Rumors said she'd found a boyfriend with a couch. Rumors said she'd OD'd in a washroom. Rumors said she'd gone west. Rumors always said those things. They were easier than the alternative. Claire added their names to her yellow legal pad, underlining them. Eric, no contact for 1 week. Last seen with Victor's crew. Danny, still appearing intermittently. Malik, gone. Jen, gone. She took the updated list back to Detective Carlson. He flipped through it, thumb leaving a faint smudge on the paper. "Kids on the street move," he said. "They drift. You know that." "Not like this," she said. "Not this many. This fast. All with the same connection." He rubbed his forehead. "Look," he said. "I put a note out to patrols about that building you mentioned. They've driven by. Nobody's seen anything. They're driving by during the day, I bet," she said. "This isn't a 9 to 5 operation." His jaw tightened at her tone. "I can't put a 24-hour watch on every squat in the city," he said. "We're stretched as it is. I've got domestic assaults coming out my ears. I've got missing 10-year-olds with actual addresses. I've got kids disappearing and turning up in stories like Maya's." Claire cut in. "If they turn up at all," he exhaled hard. "Bring me something solid," he said. "An address, a plate number, a last name, a statement from that Maya kid that she's willing to sign. Then I can push for more." "She's terrified," Claire said. "She thinks if she signs anything, someone will show up and drag her out of the shelter. Then you see why it's hard for me to move this upstairs," he said. "No witnesses, no names, no crime scene. Just," he gestured vaguely at the folder. "Smoke." She stood. "Sometimes smoke means fire," she said. "Sometimes it means kids burning." He looked away. "Sometimes it means steam," he said. "From people boiling over. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I need more." On the way out of the station, Claire stopped by the bulletin board of missing kids. School photos smiled down at her. None of them wore second-hand coats. She looked at the empty space where Eric's face would be if he'd had one of those photos. Invisible, she thought. That's how they get taken. Chapter 11. Pressure points. Word got back to Victor. Not about Claire. Not directly. But about questions at the shelters. About a cop who'd taken more notes than usual. About Maya being seen in and out of Covenant House, looking over her shoulder. He did not like vulnerabilities. "We're closing the castle," he told Nico one evening, standing in the gutted lobby. Dust motes turned in the light from a bare bulb. "Too hot." Nico frowned. "It's been working," he said. "Kids know where it is. They come to us. And now cops know where it is," Victor said. "Or will soon enough. We pivot. We go smaller. Apartments, back rooms, no more big gatherings, not for a while." "What about the stock we've got?" Nico asked. "The ones who've already done clubs, who know the routine." Victor's mouth ticked. "Some we keep," he said. "Some we move. Out of province, maybe out of country. Good earners shouldn't sit idle. There's demand in other cities." "You know that. And the ones who cause trouble?" Nico said. Victor's eyes chilled. "What do you think?" he said. Nico knew. He'd seen enough troublemakers disappear already, filed in his head under a folder marked "Do Not Dwell." "Danny," Victor went on, "she's been running her mouth, telling people at the drop-ins that we're bad news, that we set people up. She's little, but little stones still crack windows." Nico shifted his weight. "She's scared," he said. "She'll burn herself out and disappear to some other corner. They always do. Unless someone helps her remember where her opportunities lie," Victor said. "Talk to her. Remind her that doors can shut as well as open. And if she doesn't listen? Nico asked. Victor's silence was answer enough. Danny didn't listen. She tried, in the days after that night, to do what she'd always done. Keep moving. Different doorway, different couch, different corner of the underground mall. That used to be enough to shake off creepy Johns and overeager dealers. It didn't shake off Victor's people. She saw the van twice in the week after Eric vanished. Once parked at the end of the block as she and another girl walked towards the coffee shop where Outreach sometimes met them, once idling near the back entrance of the mall, always just far enough away to be plausibly just passing through. Nico started showing up more. "You're overreacting," he told her one afternoon, leaning against the wall outside the drop-in. "Nobody hurt you. You made money, so you had one weird night. Welcome to life." "She was gone for an hour," Danny said. "Nobody would let us check on her. That's not weird. That's a red flag the size of the CN Tower." Nico rolled his eyes. "You talk like a social worker now," he said. "You hanging out with that Claire lady too much. You think she's going to adopt you? Take you home to the suburbs? At least she doesn't get me drunk and lock me behind curtains," Danny snapped. His smile thinned. "You're not a kid," he said. "You want to be treated like one. Go back to group homes. You want to play with adults, learn adult rules." "I don't want to play anything with you," she said. "Stay away from me," he shrugged. "You can scream that all you like," he said. "But doors close. Remember that." He flicked ash towards the gutter, then walked away. That night, someone slashed Danny's backpack open while she slept in a stairwell. Her spare socks and the crumpled photo of her younger brother fluttered down the steps. Her small stash of coins was gone. She told herself it was random, just another street theft. The next night, a man she'd never seen before shoved her against a wall in an alley, forearm across her throat. "Stop talking about us," he said. His breath smelled of cigarettes and stale beer. "You don't know what's good for you. Get off," she rasped, kicking out. He let her go. "Next time I won't be so friendly," he said. "Next time might be somewhere folks don't hear you." She slid down the wall, coughing, as his footsteps retreated. The following morning, she walked into the drop-in, shoulders squared. "Claire," she said, "we need to talk. For real this time." Chapter 12. Names and Plates. Danny had never been a steady talker. She gave snippets, half-stories, sarcasm layered over pain. This time, she gave Claire everything she had. They sat in the back room again, the same one where Maya had shaken and cried, the same one where Claire's notepads were starting to form a small tower. The hum of city traffic seeped through the thin window. "His name's Victor," Danny said. Or at least that's what they call him. Mid-30s, short hair, talks like he's from somewhere else. Eastern Europe, maybe. Acts like he owns everything he looks at. She described him. Clothes, watch, the way he held himself like someone who never had to wait in a queue. Claire wrote as fast as she could, her shorthand a series of spirals and hooks. "And the driver?" Claire asked. "Bald," Danny said. "Big shoulders. Cops could pick him out of a lineup easy if they ever bothered to look at the guys behind the wheel and not the kids in the back." She sketched the van, as best she could. Rusty along the wheel wells, dark color, maybe blue or black, one dent on the side. "Plates?" Claire asked. Danny shook her head. "They always parked so you couldn't see them," she said. "Or by the time I thought to look, we were moving. But," she frowned, "one time, when we pulled out by that first club, there was this cab behind us, honking," she said. "Driver leaning out, yelling about us cutting him off. He shouted part of our plate at the van. Like, watch it. B, whatever." Claire leaned in. "You remember it?" she asked. "First 3 letters," Danny said slowly. "B-E-H. I kept repeating it in my head. Thought maybe there'd be some point to it." Claire wrote it down, underlining it twice. "Dates?" she asked. "Nights you went out? Any you remember clearly?" Danny sucked in a breath. "New Year's week," she said. "Somewhere between Christmas and New Year's. Cold as hell. They said holiday crowds were good business. That's when Jen..." She trailed off. Claire didn't push the detail. "And Eric?" she asked gently. "When did you see him last?" Danny's throat worked. "We left the castle that night together," she said. "All of us. Next couple days, he was weird, quiet. He tried to act like it was just another hustle, but he kept looking at doors like he was expecting someone to come through." She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Then Victor showed up at the corner 2 days later," she said. "Said he had a special opportunity for good workers. Less noise, more money. Eric went with him. Said he'd be back to tell me if it was worth it. Her eyes shone suddenly, bright and wet. He didn't come back, she said. Claire's pen slowed, then stopped. You didn't go with them? She asked. Nico was there, Danny said. He looked at me like I was an extra nickel on a bill he didn't want to pay. Said they only needed 2 strong ones that night. Eric and Malik went. That was the last time I saw either of them. What about Jen? Claire asked. Danny shook her head. She stopped coming around, she said. Somebody said they saw her getting into a car outside a strip joint up on Yonge. Could have been her. Could have been someone else. We all start to look the same to people out there. Claire pressed her fingertips to her temples for a second, then lowered her hands. Thank you, she said. This is more than we've had. I know it was hard. Danny snorted weakly. You gonna fix it? She asked. Make them all come home? Claire didn't lie. I'm going to take this to the police, again, with more detail, she said. I'm going to push harder, and I'm going to keep trying to keep other kids from getting into that van. Danny's mouth twisted. Good luck, she said. We get into vans because there's nowhere else to go. Detective Carlson's frown deepened with each new piece of information. Van plates starting with BEH, he repeated, tapping the letters. Club off Richmond, backdoor bar somewhere industrial. Eastern European guy named Victor. This is starting to sound like a screenplay. It's starting to sound like human trafficking, Claire said. You asked for something concrete. Here it is. He exhaled. All right, he said. I'll run the partial plate through the system. See how many vans match. We can cross-reference with any infractions near that area. I'll also have Vice check their notes on clubs that use promoters that look suspiciously young. He hesitated. And there's a joint task thing starting up, he said, looking uncomfortable with the bureaucratic language, about trafficking, mostly focused on cross-border, foreign women being brought in, that sort of thing. But I can float this their way. Claire's eyebrows rose. I thought trafficking was a big word, she said. He grimaced. Don't look so pleased, he said. It's still mostly paper. Reports, committees. They're trying to figure out what they're even dealing with, but at least there's a file drawer with the word on it now. Put Eric and the others in that drawer, she said. Make them real. He gave a small half smile. You don't quit, do you? He said. I can't, she said simply. They don't get to quit being gone. Chapter 13. The Raid. In the end, it wasn't a trafficking task force that brought blue uniforms to the castle. It was a fire inspection. Somewhere in the warren of departments and committees, Carlson had mentioned the building to someone from bylaw enforcement, a casual remark about kids hanging around a condemned office block. The bylaw officer, who'd been sitting on a backlog of uninspected properties, flagged it for a visit. The fire department tagged along, more out of habit than urgency. This place is a death trap, the fire captain muttered, looking up at the broken windows. If anybody's inside and a spark goes, there'll be charcoal before we get hoses in. They went in on a Tuesday afternoon, when Victor thought the building was as safe as it ever was. By then, he had already moved most operations elsewhere. The castle was more staging ground than hub, but there were still mattresses in corners, still clothing piles, still traces. The bylaw officer took one look at the tangle of extension cords and the chained exit doors, and called the police for support. Uniforms arrived with little enthusiasm. Another squat, one muttered. Great. Let's scare a bunch of kids and write some tickets nobody will pay. Inside, though, they found more than kids. They found the main room, the filing cabinet with the boombox, the crates of club flyers. They found empty bottles and used condoms, the ghosts of parties that should have been too big to hide. In a side room, they found a locked metal cabinet. The fire captain, more interested in potential accelerants than privacy, forced it with a crowbar. Inside were videotapes, unmarked VHS cassettes, dozens. A uniform called it in. Could be porn, someone said. Could be boring. They laughed uneasily. When the first tape played back at the station, the laughing stopped. Grainy images filled the screen. A room, not unlike the castle's main area, but with fewer people. Girls and boys barely out of childhood, dancing for a camera that leered. In some tapes, faces were blurred by movement. In others, kids looked straight into the lens, eyes flat. One tape showed what could only be described as auditions. Girls in underwear standing under harsh lights while men's voices murmured off camera. No one said the word trafficking yet. They didn't have to. The tapes got bundled into evidence bags. The castle got boarded up again. this time with official seals. The story made a small column in the local paper. City shuts down dangerous squat, with a couple of lines about possible exploitation of minors. Victor was out of the city by then. So were Eric and Malik. Chapter 14. Aftermath. It took weeks for Claire to get access to any of what had been found. Even then, it was through sideways channels. An off-the-record conversation with Carlson in a quiet corner of a coffee shop. A printout slipped across a table. "It's bigger than we thought," he said, eyes shadowed. "The tapes aren't just here. There are labels with other cities. Montreal, Vancouver, names that match missing youth cases out west. Someone's been doing this a long time." Claire's hand shook around her cup. "Do you see them?" she asked. "Eric? Malik? Jen?" He hesitated. "In some of them, the kids are turned away, or the quality's too bad," he said. "In others, we think we recognize a few. We're not showing them to families unless we have to. It's not something you unsee." She swallowed bile. "Charges?" she asked. "Maybe," he said. "Against the property owner for unsafe conditions, at the very least. If we can link names to faces, maybe more. Problem is, everyone on the ground is small fry. The ones at the top left just enough people between themselves and the dirt so they can claim ignorance." He looked at her. "You're Victor?" he said. "We've got no last name, no clear shot of his face. Whatever ID he used for club rentals was fake. He's smoke." "And the kids?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. "Some may be in those tapes," he said. "Some may be elsewhere. We're pushing their names to other jurisdictions to see if they pop on any systems. But you know how it is. No fixed address, no school records. They fall through every net." She stared at the printout. On it in cold type were words like sex trade, organized crime, juvenile victims. "Will they at least mark them properly now?" she asked. "Not just as runaways?" He nodded slowly. "There's a note in the national database now," he said. "Suspected victim of trafficking. Exploitation." It was, she supposed, something. A label on a file in a drawer that might otherwise have been forgotten. Not a rescue. Not a warm bed, but a name. Danny heard about the raid secondhand, like everything. Cops busted the castle, a boy at the drop-in said, half gleeful, half bitter. "Took all the wires. Boarded it up. Guess we gotta find a new clubhouse." "Good," Danny said flatly. "Bad," another kid countered. "That was the only place I could get warm without some guy putting his hand up my shirt." She bit back the retort that wanted to come. Instead, she went to find Claire. "They shut it down," she said. "Does that mean we're safe now?" Claire shook her head. "It means they'll move," she said. "Smaller places, less visible, maybe further out, but it's one less door they can drag you through." "And Eric?" Danny asked. Her voice cracked on his name. Claire exhaled. "We don't know," she said. "We know he's not in any hospital or jail under that name. We know he's not come back to any shelter we're connected with. We know his file has more than runaway on it now. That's all. So he's just gone," Danny said. "For now," Claire said. "People turn up years later sometimes. You know that. They walk back in, older, different, and everyone says, 'We thought you were dead,' and they laugh like it's a joke. Do you believe that?" Danny asked. Claire thought of the tapes, of Maya's shaking hands. "Sometimes," she said. It was not a lie. It was not quite the truth. Chapter 15. Years later. Time moved. Kids kept coming through the doors of the shelters, the drop-ins, the back rooms where Claire now trained younger outreach workers. The city did what cities do. It added programs, cut funding, opened new buildings, closed old ones. The skyline changed. The castle was eventually torn down, replaced by condominiums with glass balconies and marketing taglines about urban vibrancy. In 2004, a federal report used the word trafficking in connection with Canadian youth domestically, not just foreign women crossing borders. It spoke dryly of organized crime groups exploiting vulnerable youth for profit, citing examples pulled from police files, including one that sounded very much like the Castle and Victor's clubs, though no names were given. In 2008, a national survey on street-involved youth mentioned that many had histories of exploitation, including survival sex and coerced involvement in the sex trade, and recommended better coordination between child welfare, police, and shelters. Reports, recommendations, acronyms. Claire kept working. She was in her 40s now, lines at the corners of her eyes deeper, hair shot with gray. She had seen kids come back from things that should have broken them, and she had seen kids fold under things the world barely noticed. She had burnt out twice, taken leaves, sworn she was done. She always came back. One rainy afternoon, she sat in a small training room with a new hire, a woman in her 20s named Asha, sharp-eyed, full of the determined fire Claire remembered from her own early days. "We go over these files," Claire said, sliding a folder across the table. "Not because you're going to fix them, but because you need to know the history of the streets you're walking into." Asha opened the folder. Inside, neat labels marked sections: aggression protocols, shelter policies, education referrals. At the back, a thinner section bore a handwritten title: Early Trafficking Cases, Street Youth. "Is this—" Asha began. Claire nodded. "The Castle," she said. "Jarvis, mid-90s, before everyone was saying the word. Before anyone believed kids with no addresses could be victims of anything other than their own bad choices." Asha leafed through. Clippings, photocopied memos, notes in Claire's tight hand. 4 names underlined on a yellowing page: Eric L., 16, Danielle K., 15, survivor; Malik R., 17, Jenny S., 14. "Danny's alive?" Asha asked softly. "She is," Claire said. "Left the street a few years after all that. Hard road. She still calls sometimes, works off and on in a diner out west. Doesn't like to talk about back then." "And the others?" Asha asked, though she knew. "Never officially found," Claire said. "No bodies, no confirmed sightings. Files marked as missing, suspected trafficking. That's where the system landed." Asha looked up. "That's it?" she said. "After all that? After tapes and raids and reports?" Claire's smile was tired, but not without warmth. "The work doesn't end with one building," she said. "Or one report. Or 3 kids. It's slow. It's cumulative. Every time someone writes one of these stories down, it gets a little harder for people to pretend it never happens." She tapped the folder. "The horror isn't just what was done to them," she said. "It's how easy it was to forget, to call them runaways and file them away. Your job is to remember, to listen when the next Maya walks through that door and says, 'I got away.'" Asha nodded slowly. "And the monsters?" she asked. "Victor, the driver, the ones who did it, they just get to walk?" Claire thought of Victor's watch glinting under club lights, of the driver's thick hands on the wheel, of faceless men in suits counting cash. "Some of them do," she said. "Some get caught on other things. Guns, drugs, tax fraud. They fall eventually, but not always for what they did to kids like ours." She met Asha's gaze. "That's part of the horror too," she said. "The world doesn't have tidy endings. We do the work anyway." Outside, rain traced lines down the windows, blurring the city. Somewhere not far from where the castle had once stood, teenagers in hoodies huddled in bus shelters, trading rumors about jobs, parties, rides, new doors, opening, new kids, standing on thresholds. Claire closed the folder gently. "All right," she said. "Let's go downstairs. There's a drop-in starting, and I want you to see how it looks before the paperwork." As they left the room, the file sat on the table for a moment, spine slightly cracked, pages worn from years of being opened and read. Names on paper, not enough.